Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Do you love sci-fi? Are you a horror fan? Maybe you prefer action or fantasy. 2000 AD has it all and should be on your radar. With a whole universe of characters from Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog to Rogue Trooper, Shakara Halo Jones, and many more, every weekly issue you get 5 action-packed thrills from incredible creators such as Garth Ennis, Rob Williams, Alex DeCampi, Dan Abnett, and so many others. Get a print subscription and it'll arrive to your door every week. And your first issue is free, or subscribe digitally. Get free back issues and download DRM-free copies of every issue for just $9 a month. That's 128 pages of incredible comics every month for less than $10. That's like a whole graphic novel's worth. All subscribers get amazing offers like discount vouchers and exclusive product offers. Head to 2000ad.com and click on subscribe now, or download the 2000AD app. And why wait? Start reading today. I'll put links in the show notes for you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm Byron O'Neill, your host for our Comics Creator Chat. Today, I'm delighted to welcome returning guest Jesse Lonergan on the show with me. Last time Jesse was on, we were chatting about his Boom Studios project, Man's Best, with co-creator Pornsak Pichetshote, which is my first introduction to his work. And I was an immediate fan. In fact, I have a signed copy of his book, Miss Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, on the wall behind me. Right?
Yeah.
There.
Up there. Oh, yeah.
Over the Doctor Strange skateboard.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's back on to chat about his most recent project, Drome, a big old hardcover project dropping in the middle of August with First Second, which I will say for the record is one of my 3 10 out of 10 books, no notes, that I've read this year, and is chiseled in stone to be one of my picks for our end of the year award show. Oh. Yes, I actually do believe it's that good. Jesse, now that I've properly buttered you up, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed the book.
Yeah, I absolutely did. And it prompted some really interesting mental excursions for me. I'll share a personal story here before we get into the book. So after reading the review copy the other night and doing some research for the interview, aspects of it actually showed up in my dreams, which was wild. I was on this Earth-like planet as a part of the rebellion fighting a tyrannical somebody or other, probably for obvious reasons. Redgar from the Transformers, with Weird Al's voice, yes, for anybody who's curious, was our fearless leader. And our squad leader was ex-Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson. These aspects have nothing to do with the book.
Okay.
But they are pretty cool. The squad was tasked with infiltrating an important Mountside base by hopping a bunch of trains. Okay, this is a dream. I can't explain all that stuff. There were no guns in the world, and the battles were fought mentally or by using these tech weapons that were based on sacred geometry, which is where the book ties in. So the only one I could really remember was this landmine of sorts that when you step on it at the trapped center, a bunch of lasers rise up from all the points of a Metatron cube, and they fly around slicing everything to meat salad in a very satisfyingly geometric way. So I thought you might enjoy my digesting of the book and how it invaded my dream.
Yeah. It's a pretty geometric book. It
is.
I sort of feel like with Hydra, which came out in 2020 from Image, like that I sort of figured out like my idiosyncrasies and like how to put them on a page so that they would be like appreciated by other people, and like this sort of like order obsessed like these rules of grids and things, and Drome's sort of a visual continuation of that, narratively a different direction, pushing that sort of, I don't know, I think of it as like the music of the spheres sort of thing, where it's like there's all of these like mathematical gears in motion sort of throughout the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And to tell the truth, I'm a little bit hesitant to try to encapsulate what it's all about, because I don't think I'll do it justice. But it's not because it's challenging to follow, but there's so many layers to it. So
yeah, I kind of think of like when I'm that makes me actually feel good. I
Okay.
think of
Good,
like,
okay.
well, I kind of think like as of stories as sort of being this very like delicate thing, like and ideas are these delicate things like clouds almost. And but you have to turn them into something that can be held onto. But like you want to keep it still functioning as like a cloud. And so it's like where can you put the handles? And I feel sort of like if you do it too clumsily, like you lose the cloud aspect. It's just a box. And sort
Okay.
of like very like sort of delicately trying to hold all these pieces together so that it is clear and it is can be followed, but it still has this sort of like dreamlike quality where it can sort of spread in your mind, where it has that openness without being vague or without being unclear, without being maybe there's elements of mystery, but like in the core aspect, there's not much mystery. And so like with Drome, I was trying to have that quality sort of like keep it from ever feeling like I was sort of crushing the idea and kind of letting the idea breathe. Um, with the story and sort of getting into and sort of with that sort of having a story that like is very mythologically based, very sort of fairy tale based, and so in a lot of ways maybe is familiar, but then twisted a bit so that it's familiar but unfamiliar. Like maybe like there's you have some expectations, but it won't meet them in the way that you expect them to be met, or it will shift in another way. I don't know, kind of like on an eel or something, kind of like hard to hold on to and like kind of slithering around. Um, and yeah, that was sort of one of my like one of the things that like with stories is I kind of like things not being held that tightly. Um, and I find like for me personally, creatively, if I really write things out, if I really plan things out, it ends up very boring and it ends up
Yeah.
very like it doesn't have good ideas in it. And if I leave things a little bit more loose, I might come up with something that I'm a little more uncomfortable with, or I'm like, I don't know if what this is saying, like I feel like there's like a critic in your head, and that critic is fine about like, okay, well, what will people think of this? What will blah 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 blah. But it doesn't lead to good ideas. Worrying about what other people will think, and so I kind of like try and have a creative process that turns that critic off until way later in the process, and I'm like looking at like a sequence of finished pages, and then be like, okay, where is this line? But normally I find I like that sort of kind of abstract, but not really, quality to stories.
Yeah, your slithering cloud worked because it
Yeah,
got in
yeah.
my dream for
Oh,
sure,
yeah,
so
that's good. Um,
yeah, and well, the nucleus of this cloud are these 2 celestial beings who are working through the very messy process of creating humanity.
yeah,
That's on the surface, but it also read to me as a reflective journey of being an artist and all that entails, trying to birth your particular unique vision into the world.
yeah.
So, how did this all start?
Um, I think, like, it it started a lot of places. I don't know, it's hard to tell where it began. Like, I first started, like, working on it in June of 2020. And it was the project I worked like on in the background of lots of projects. I think 4 other books where I did the art for while I was working on this. I did, yeah, Ghost of Science Past, Arca, Miss Truesdale, and Man's Best. All of those were completed while I was also working on this in the background. And I think the idea is like I like these big mythological stories. I like fairy tales. I like folklore, and I like the quality they have. And I also like that sort of epic weight of like a big long book. And so I knew like this was going to be a longer book. In 300 pages. And so I was interested in taking these sort of narrative ideas and visual ideas and really like pushing them sort of as far as I could, with this sort of big heavy book. Uh, and and then sort of, yeah, I feel like there's always there's the story, which is these, celestial beings and these demigods and battling sort of chaos and order in this primordial world is sort of the main narrative. But then there's also, I think, a meta narrative like of the creative process of like I think sort of like with it's hard to hold like all
Yeah.
ideas, but like I think there is like this simplicity that at the beginning and like this sort of form that's very basic at the beginning that sort of like gets more and more complicated and sort of builds on itself as it goes, which I sort of feel is like how creative works as like if you're learning a musical instrument, you learn like a note, or like a
Yeah.
guitar, you learn a chord, and then maybe you learn another chord. And now you have two chords, and that's enough for a very basic song. You get to three, you've got every Ramones song, like and sort of like, but then you sort of like, I think creatively you want to build on those things and add to those things and sort of I wanted the story to work in that sense as well as it like builds on things. And there are elements in it where I was like, I'm not sure if I know how to do that. When I started it, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Like I don't have the skills to do that yet. There's a character that's prominent in like the third chapter who's really not defined by lines. Like there's no he has there's a few like markings that I inked, but otherwise it's all color, and that is defining the character and the shape of the character, this fire based form. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. When I started, I was like, I don't think I can do that yet. But I think when I get there, I'll be able to do that. And then, that in later elements, there's like going beyond sort of this realm of existence. And it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. But I think when I get there, I'll know how to do it and how to push that thing and sort of like trying to keep it at like the limit of my ability, like, like never really like easing back. And I think that desire, at least partially, comes from like reading graphic novels and this sort of frustration I would have with myself and how I would read them. Of I would look at the art maybe for the first 50 pages or maybe for the 60 pages. But then I would sort of disappear and I would stop paying attention to it.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Y'all, Jimmy, the Chaos Goblin, strikes again. I should have known better than to mention I was working on my DC Universe meets Ravenloft hybrid D&D campaign on social media. My bad. He goes and tags a bunch of comics creators we know, and now I have to get it in gear and whip this campaign into shape so we can start playing. Another friend chimes in, are you going to make maps? It's fair to say it's been a while since I put something together, so I guess? It was then that I discovered Arkenforge. If you don't know who Arkenforge is, they have everything you need to make your TTRPG more fun and immersive, allowing you to build, play, and export animated maps, including in-person Fog of War capability that lets your players interact with maps as the adventure unfolds while you, the DM, get the full picture. Now I'm set to easily build high-res animated maps, saving myself precious time and significantly adding nuance to our campaign. That's a win every day in my book. Check them out at arkenforge.com and use the discount code YETI5 to get $5 off. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you, and big thanks to Arkenforge for partnering with our show. I think I'm going to make Jimmy play a Goblin Warlock just to get even.
Welcome back. The way you sort of exemplified that artist's journey that you were talking about, for me, were these infinity stone that I don't know how to describe them a different
Yeah.
way, but you
Yeah.
had time, control, and language, and they bleed into each other. It takes
Mhm.
time to exert control of your craft. Then you get a singular, emergent personal voice, and then that becomes your language and your
Mhm.
way of expressing that to the world that other people can understand. They
Yeah.
understand your language and can communicate with it.
Right.
So was your intent to mirror the artistic journey in this, or just take a different path with the monomyth, I guess?
I, I think it was it's a little bit mirroring the artistic journey, and then also like my take on like the monomyth, the core sort of elements of like how narratives work, how stories work. But like I found like I remember like creatively when I first started drawing comics, like putting in like a time cut was very hard for me. Like like it was like all my first comics I feel were like basically like real time comics. Like where it's like
You need a gatefold cover and put them out on the wall to read
no,
it?
but just like, well, this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens and
Okay.
this happens. No like jumps in time or it's like a really, really old movie where it's like, oh, you got to show the fire truck driving to the driving. You can't like, I feel like movies are probably like where you can see it the most of like you watch an old movie and it's so slow because they're showing everything. And like now it's like, oh no, cut. And it's like we're shortening up that time and you don't need to see a person driving. They can just like doorbell rings. They got there. Like, you can cut that time and sort of like narratively, that was like sort of something I had to learn, like, because everything would just be like, well, he gets in the car, he drives to the place, he opens the door, all of that stuff. And sort of like building on that and sort of thinking of comics as a language that has to be sort of learned. Like I feel like sadly in the US, I feel very few people read comics. Like, a comic that sells 300,000 copies is like, whoa, that's huge. And it's like 300,000? Like, that is not huge. In any other media, like, that's pretty tiny. But if you hand a comic to people who don't read comics, they don't even know what to do with it. They're like, I don't know how to read this. It's its own language and sort of I feel sometimes with my comics because I feel sometimes I'm a little bit like comics obsessive and like I think of it like inside baseball, like inside comics, like this like if you don't read comics, you really don't know how to read this. But I think you could follow it. Like I think you could start because it is its own language and it starts sort of like building off like my weird idiosyncrasies of how things work. And then they start like informing. I think I like to think that there's a bit of a back and forth between me and the reader, you know, at quite a distance since you're looking at something I drew 3 years ago potentially, but like where it's like I'm setting up like a logical argument in the panel layout and that logical argument continues through. And I think with things like people talk about feed lines, like the way I'll use a motion line, but it also breaks the panel and becomes part of the panel and stuff. And it's
Yeah.
something I don't think about anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I do that. Like they're like, how does that work? It's like, oh, I don't know. How does a word work? Like it's it's at once movement, it's at once a break, like, it's both at the same time, and, like, I feel sometimes like it's my weird obsessions coming out because it does it starts getting kind of mathematical. Like it starts creating these rules, and how can these rules work? Like if you use a motion line and you break through a panel, okay, you have to have clear gutters. Like you
Right.
cannot have a splash bleed page, because all of a sudden that's going to mess everything up. And it's sort of like setting up all these rules of how it could work, that I will obsess about. And I will like get out compasses and be like, okay, if I break it here, but here, I don't know if anyone else will do that. Sometimes I feel like, uh, with the creative journey, is it's and in terms of finding your own voice, it's like, well, what are you willing to do that you find compelling enough to do that no one else will do? And
Yeah.
I think the way I obsess about layouts and stuff, I don't think other people would do that. Like, I was on a panel, and people were talking about, oh, I just do like one layout, two layouts, and it's like, oh, I'll draw every iteration I think possible. Like, like if it's, if I'm working within a grid of, like, Drome is on a grid that's 7 tiers, 5 rows. Yeah, no, so 5 columns. So it's like 35 panels potentially every page. But it's like if I'm going to draw a 6 panel page, I've probably diagrammed every possibility to have 6 panels within that layout, because I
Wow.
think it matters, and I find it interesting. And you're like, there's like, oh, six. It's like, well, it can just be 5 little ones on the bottom and then a big one on top, or it could be 5 little ones on top and then a big one, or it could be like 3 in the middle. Like, like all of these iterations you can do, and how that will affect the reading, and sort of if the hierarchies that can be created within that just on panel size or panel placement. Like, well, if I do 2 little ones in the corner, that can read as like a period. Like on like that's the denouement of this page. Um and I think that's something that I think other people can do. I just don't know if they're that interested in doing it. And like I find it interesting, like, to think about how how many combinations can there be? What does how does the combination affect the page? Um, and sort of, yeah, leaning into that with Drome a lot. And I think maybe even more so, because while I was working on it, I was also working with writers on other books. And
Right.
it's the way they think about the amount of information and what kind of information goes on a page is very different from with Drome, how I'm thinking about what information and how it goes on the page. And so the blending, like I think sometimes, like, I would be working on something that's like, okay, I have to do it this way. So Drome would push further into my weirdness, because I was just doing it for myself. I didn't know if it would get published. It was just my thing. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is very much. I guess this is the two different journeys that you're taking us on in the book, and probably why it resonates so much for me as somebody who very much thinks artistically and loves panel layouts. I obsess over stupid things like that, and it's just in my nature, I guess. But the last time you were on with Pornsak, you were talking about Man's Best and talking about how the visual freedom. He's like, yeah, Jesse does this cool stuff. I just let Jesse do what Jesse does, you know.
Yeah.
But you even in that, it's not the same as being able to in just enwrap yourself in a
Yeah.
personal project like that, you know, and you have all these different sacred geometry forms that are at play. You have the shell and the Vesica Pisces, you're playing with 5 platonic solids, you have the golden spiral.
Yeah.
Did you start with a list of these things you're wanting to throw into a wedge into a book, or like, how does this work?
um I didn't start with a list, although I do write lists. That's another part of the idiosyncrasies. It's like writing, I think, lists of things that I think are interesting or be good to include. But I think it it was sort of, I think working with like collaborator, like working with Pornsak, it shouldn't be the same. Like it should be different. Like,
Yeah.
because it's a collaboration, and so like he's bringing his elements, and in some regards, like it's like, oh, you can chill out, you don't need to worry about the story. That's like he's going to take the lead on the sequencing and the overarching sort of thing, and your job is to like sort of focus and push these elements, and it's that's what it should be. It's sort of like when like a band you like, if like a person does like a solo thing and it sounds exactly like the band, it's like, well, what's the point of
Right.
it should be different because you're not playing with the same people. And sort of like, yeah, like getting this sort of like geometric obsession, the platonic solids, I got really obsessed with on Hedra, and sort of trying to I I l I guess it's sort of like a lot of maybe occult or paranormal stuff with like the platonic solids. I like the idea that it could work. That these structures are the shape of our universe, because it's so mathematically beautiful that there are these
Yeah.
five structures that are mathematically perfect in their way, and one of them is air, one of them is water, one of them, like I love that idea. I don't It's not true. It doesn't work, but it is so beautiful, and sort of like I like a lot of those sort of alchemy sort of ideas, because it it's so beautiful, it feels like it should be true, but it's like, yeah, but within my fiction, it gets to be true, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like within the paranormal stuff, I guess it's sort of things like you want Xener cards to work. You would like those tests to know that someone can do that, but then it's like, well, actually, there's cues, or they can see reflections in glasses, and like all these sorts of things. But I think that's sort of with a lot of there's a wonder with that sort of thing, especially like when you're like, I don't know what kids are like now, because I grew up in, for the most part, in rural Vermont, in the 80s and 90s, and I feel like the 80s and 90s are so different from today. But also, once you
Yep.
get like rural Vermont, it's a lot more like a Northern Rockwell painting. Like sometimes it feels like I grew up more in the 70s or 60s. Um, just because you didn't have where I grew up, like Blockbuster, no, didn't have a Blockbuster. MTV, I got like mid high school, so like, it was like there were three stations growing up, but so in that isolation, there you would hear about an idea, and your brain might think, oh, maybe that's possible, maybe that can be real, and there's sort of that wonder about those things. And I think with Drome, I try to have that, like, maybe what allow that like possibility and that wonder to sort of exist within the story, that like, yeah, platonic solids do explain the universe. Um, but also like, what is this person's power? Like how I think one of the cool things about, I'm just going all over,
No,
Unbreakable
you're good.
is you don't know how strong Bruce Willis's character is. Like they show him lifting weights, they never get to how much weight he can lift. He gets this opportunity to play football against some big strong guy. You don't see it, and so you're not even really sure what his powers are. Like he's unbreakable. It's like, can he? Maybe there are some specific things, but it's like it's left sort of like the upper end is unknown. And I feel like with a kid, like the idea of Superman is like this idea of like, well, how fast can he go? Like that it isn't known. And I find it being known, it being canonical is boring. I'm like, no, that's not fun. And so I like leaving those possibilities open where you know that there is power, but you don't know how much. Like you know
Yeah.
there's a possibility, but you don't know where it ends. And sort of like, yeah, looking to have that sort of wonder present in the story as well. Huh.
Well, to kind of unpack the two main characters here, we have form and spirit, which
Hmm.
are kind of the puppet masters of humanity's fate.
Right.
They function as a yin and a yang, a black and a white, a
Yep.
male and a female. We're dealing with polar opposites. And
Yeah.
they are also fallible, which
Yeah.
is very, very common in most creation myths. You don't see it so much in the Judeo Christian one. But what was appealing to you about using duality as the nucleus of your amorphous expanding and contracting cloud?
Yeah. I think to some extent there was this idea. I mean, there is a history of duality, and there is yin and yang and Taoism and all these beliefs, which I felt were things that I could sort of draw upon. But also, I like the idea of the characters being based on ink. Like, so
Okay.
it's like black and paper, like and so it's like the present and the not present, and the negative space and the demarcation lines, and then
Sure.
characters that are sort of filling in CMY, like that.
Yes.
There is like a blue character, there's a red character, there's a yellow, and these are these sort of core demigods that are primary colors, and sort of having these sort of within these limited elements building out from it. And it doesn't work perfectly. I didn't like if I don't think I have like the discipline or fortitude to go through and tell a story where only those colors are present until a new color is introduced. Like, but yeah, like using those sorts of ideas as sort of the grounding or the structure for the world of like you have these big powers that are the negative space and the lines, and then there are like these minor powers that are the colors, and form, and then as it goes along, it sort of breaks apart at some points where it's all color, or and sort of pushing those ideas um, within sort of the medium that it exists in. Um, like uh, I thought was an an interesting way of sort of approaching, like we talked about the platonic solids, like these sort of core elements. And within comics, like the sort of core elements are these like four ink colors and paper, um, and
Yeah.
and yeah, just using that as my guide, um, in some way. Which it's a little bit like I think I'm the only one who cares that like
No,
there
I
are
care.
like these there are these platonic solids, and so there's definitely a water character, there's definitely an earth character, there's definitely a fire character, there's not an air character. um Maybe that'll be in the sequel where the air character makes the or wind makes themselves known. um but that character is sort of missing from the overall story, but I felt it's okay. um I feel like, uh, it's good to have rules. It's good to break them too, like, or to not force yourself into them to the point where it's like you're just where you're not thinking anymore.
I definitely got some of that air element from Spirit because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
form is the bull, very
mhm,
classically masculine across ancient cultures, Greece,
yeah,
Mesopotamia, Minoan.
yep.
The female spirit though, she's got a Grace Jones sort of flavor to it, like Storm,
Sort
with
of,
the
yeah,
mohawk thing going.
yeah,
Yeah, I could see Win there.
yeah, yeah. It can work. It can be made to work. It's not explicit though. Yeah, yeah, trying to with the black and white spirit informed characters, like trying to have them be representative in profile, like that you that they work in silhouette was sort of like a key idea. None of the other characters really work as much that way, and sort of because they're the most basic, like at a glance you can recognize them and see them and know who they are within the world. Uh, and so that was sort of part of the reason for this big mohawk, is that it's very distinct and visible.
Yeah, the thing that I really locked on was that CMYK crucible, which is the way
Yeah.
I kind of envisioned it. That is a Simon game for people of my vintage. They will understand the Simon game with the
Simon
four
game?
memory buttons. You don't know about Simon?
Oh, wait, we have to press you have to remember the pattern?
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't realize it was
exactly.
called the Simon game. Uh, is that what it's called? The
Yeah,
Simon
yeah,
game? Okay.
yeah. That was Simon. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I remember that now. I didn't have it though.
Okay, okay. So we're gonna say that's circumstantial, and that's just my brain injecting that into the DNA of the story.
yeah. Yeah, I feel I think of it there's definitely like a game aspect. I feel to the story and to the way it works. Well, puzzles maybe would be better than games.
Well, those puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
digging into your personal, visual DNA here.
Mhm.
I saw the Instagram post with some of your influences ranging from, Scud the
Too many
Disposable
things, yeah.
Assassin, Tank Girl, and MC Escher. So
Yeah.
so how would you describe your visual DNA that's made up out of all these little pieces?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't I feel like I kind of try and take from everything, or I just end up taking from everything. Like there there were the comics that sort of like got me into comics, which would be like in the 90s, the Image stuff, but then also things like the Tank Girl, which in the US came out sort of through Dark Horse, that first Dark
Yeah.
Horse mini series. Scud, which was Rob Schrab, just you know pure like weirdness. So, but these like big bold lines and definitely like in comparison to everything else, like a not caring that much about like what was expected of how things can work and what this
Yeah.
universe is. It's like, oh, where he was gonna go, it felt like whatever Rob Schrab thought was cool was what it was gonna do. And it wasn't gonna be like, I think this is cool and I'm going to change it so that it can work within the context of my world. It's like, no, I think this is cool and this is the context of my world. Like, um, yeah. And I just feel like there's a lot of things I draw on, like, but the influences get very muddied quick. Like, I love Chris Ware, especially like the more early 90s stuff of his, which I felt had more of a sense of play than Jimmy Corrigan. And after it's still great. It's still, this these impressive achievements, but there's this sort of sense of fun that I don't find anymore. Like where I'm he portrays himself as quite a miserable person. I don't know how true that is. But it feels like that's become more the tone as he's gone on. While his earlier stuff had plenty of like sadness and pain in it, but also had sort of like jokes and play and things where it felt like he was letting the art sort of lead wherever it would go. And
Yeah.
so that was very influential. Mobius, um, big influence in terms of I feel like I was very late in developing my like drawing ability. Like I was always making
Okay.
comics, but I almost feel like I had an anti-ill view. Very like that the comics, like the language of comics is the art. And if you're drawing like Jim Lee, that drawing draws too much attention to itself and you're not paying attention to the real art, which is comics. And it's distracting. This was my attitude maybe when I was like 23, 24.
Okay.
Like where like that this idea about like how the art should work is that it should almost become invisible. And like, you should just be in the story, in this feeling, in this, you know, reading where the art doesn't matter, which I think can be a valid idea. I think maybe some artists work towards that, but I I think it misses a lot. And Mobius was sort of like the one to sort of like break me out of that, of like, no, you can really let those drawings draw attention to themselves. You just need to let it work within the story. And like to you're going to spend so much time drawing for people not to realize that you're drawing. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to let people know you can draw. Like and it's okay to like be flashy every now and then. And Mobius was sort of the one that like cracked that for me. Like I don't know why it takes so long to get something sometimes. Like I feel like there's things with music where like people are like, this band's great. And you listen to me like, I don't get it. Like I don't know
Sure.
what I don't understand what people are hearing in this band. This band is not great. And like there are things for me that maybe they'll never crack. Like the band, people talk about the band as this wonderful musical group, and it's like, I don't get it. Like these are long, boring songs. Like I don't hear what other people are hearing. Led Zeppelin also didn't get it. I was like, I don't get it. This is really dumb. Like, and now I get it. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, this is a don't pay that much attention to the lyrics because it's not about those lyrics. It's about like this is a band that can really play, and they are like putting out some fireworks on every level. Like
Yeah.
every member is launching fireworks at some point in an album or something, and sort of like, okay, I can appreciate that. Like, and I like Led Zeppelin now, but it wasn't immediate, and I don't know why it takes so many of too many punk rock records, and Led Zeppelin was like, guitar leads. Like, who cares? Like, I just want a loud, distorted guitar. Um, but it takes time to hear it, and sort of like so like Mobius sort of cracked that like artist thing where it's like,
Okay.
oh, like Jim Lee, like, yeah, okay. Like, these like pullouts, like they're pretty cool. I guess. I still, not a big fan of necessarily the stories of Wildcats. Anything, but like appreciating that level and then sort of like feeling like my skills on that front were very underdeveloped, like that I just couldn't draw things that well. Like I could draw very functional comics, but I couldn't draw things that well, and sort of pushing myself to build those skills, which I feel is still going on. Um, still something I'm working on, is building skills because I always feel I'm behind. I think there's I didn't go to art school. I didn't spend those hours. Like there's the people, and everyone's like, oh, art school's not all it's cracked up to be. Um, but it's just like being self taught and feeling like there is a better way to do this than I'm doing it. I don't know what it is because I didn't study. Um, I always feel like I'm behind in sort of my ability to draw in terms of like the skills. But like Mobius was the
It's all
one.
about recognize the rules so you can break them.
Yeah,
That's art school.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, no, I mean, and it goes that feeling on my part goes back and forth because I feel like what I do now, I'm old, but it's
You're not that
pretty
old.
well, but like I think, but I didn't have a comics career in my 20s. I didn't have a comics
Right.
career in my 30s. I had a comics career in my 40s. Like
Congratulations, you've made it.
that sense of being old, of like there are people who have careers in their 20s, 30s. Um, but on the other hand, I feel like I do have sort of a very personal view and a sort of idiosyncratic view that is distinct from if someone who maybe who worked within the industry for 15, 20 years, where it's like,
Sure.
oh, I kind of have like a little bit of a clumsy all thumbs approach, but it works. like that's at least how I think of the way I draw. It's sort of like, I don't know, using a hammer to do what a screw should do. But but it's it's lived in, at least. Um,
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I am a constant tinkerer of my own work, and it's the beauty of working in photography. And now that we have digital, I mean, even back when it wasn't in the darkroom,
yeah.
you're going to reinterpret a negative even in the darkroom
Hmm.
in different ways, and depending on how the chemical composition or how long it's
Right.
this or how long it's that, you're going to get different results. And I think tinkering with your work to me is kind of the hallmark of a true artist. And I mean, maybe that's a bold statement, but it
Well,
just
I think there are artists who keep there are artists who sort of seem to stagnate. And this is like, across the board, I feel it. But you can
Sure.
also sort of see it with comic book artists, where it's like it seems like they hit their thing and they sort of stop, and they don't really progress much. But then there are people who seem like they're always moving. And I think Mike Mignola would be like probably the best example of that, where like I think he's in his 60s now, and it feels like he's still growing, and he's still like honing in on himself. Like this perfection
Right.
of form, where you look at you know Bowling with Corpses that came out this year, and to me, it's like artistically distinct from Hellboy and Hell, which is 10, 15 years ago now, which is artistically distinct from like 90s Hellboy, like, which is, and
Yeah.
Hellboy is distinct from like what he did at Marvel. Like, there's this steady growth. And I feel there are other artists where you don't necessarily see that, where it's like, well, it either looks the same, it hasn't really changed that much, or it starts to decline, where like it seems like they don't have the patience to do what they did before, maybe because they've done it too many times and haven't added in the elements. Um, and yeah, so I feel like there's always personally like boredom and repetition of the same thing just doesn't interest me. And I think maybe because comics wasn't a job for so long and I was, you know, had a day job, it's like, well, this is what I'm doing for fun. And I'm not just going to do the same thing and be bored. Like it'll change and I'll move in a different direction. And the sort of freedom of not having deadlines for all those years, and not having, I feel like even now the way I worked on Drome was different from the way a lot of people work on books, because I was like, I'm just going to draw it myself. And
Yeah.
when it's done, I'll send it to a publisher, which I feel, I guess to me, sort of sometimes I feel this weird sort of attitude from people of like, well, I'm putting together a pitch, and if I get a deal, I'll make the book. Or, if the Kickstarter succeeds, I'll make the book. I don't understand that attitude, because I'm going to make the book first. And if I can get a deal, if I can get a Kickstarter, great. But I'm going to make the book. And
Yeah.
I feel that's like maybe coming out of like mini comics, maybe just like, I don't know, being in a band. It's like, I'm not going to like, I'll record the song if you pay me. It's like, what? No, I got a 4-track. Like, we'll do it. Like I that that attitude just there's a disconnect for me. And I understand, like, I worked on Drome for 4 years, and that's a long that's a long time
That's a long time.
with no promise that anything's going to come from it. But well, so what? It's what I enjoy doing. Like
Yeah.
it's the most, it's where my interest is, and it's what I like doing. So I'm going to do it. And it'd be great if someone pays me. It's great that people pay me to do this stuff, but I like doing it.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about it in that way, because one of the major thematic things from the book for me was free will. And it's always that struggle with being an artist, commercial work, personal
Mhm.
work. I made a really, really strong line and delineated those two things.
Mhm.
This is commercial work. I will shoot it. I don't care after you've bought it if you wipe your ass with it. And I really right?
Yeah.
And then there's my personal work, and that's me. That
Yeah.
is absolutely sacred. And that is something I had to decide for myself at the very beginning of my career so that I could stay sane.
Yeah.
But I think that it's interesting to hear you talk about the drive. I'm just going to make it. I'm just
Right.
going to
Yeah.
make it, because when free will is a big component of the book, those two
Yeah.
things don't exactly marry. It's a weird marriage.
I mean, it is weird. I like it is
It's a little weird.
it is a weird thing. And like, I don't know, like free will's a hard one. But
Yeah.
I feel, and I think the creative process is also a challenge. Like what, I'm at this point where like, I'm asked what the next thing is, and there's a good chance the next thing will get published, and what I do will get published somewhere. And like, is the next thing that I create, should it be published? Like because there are things, ideas that I have that I'm like, I just need to. It doesn't count if it's just in my head, so it needs to be put
Yep.
down on paper. That doesn't mean it's
Yep.
for anybody else. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be published. I like, and it's like, and but like there's like this hard pull in that of like, it could be published. Like, will it damage my oeuvre if I publish this bad comic that doesn't have a point? That's point is creative process and not the resulting comic. And I don't know, it's this back and forth tug and pull between like, I just want to draw this right now, you know, like that's free will. Just draw whatever you want. And well, you have a 3-year-old, like, and
Right.
like, like there's the taking a job, like, oh, like they'll pay me this much to draw a 10-page story in some
Yeah.
anthology or whatever. Um, and or like something like that. But then there's even on a personal level, I might just want to like work on my watercolor skills, but it's like, hey, that's not gonna. There's no long term like immediacy with that, as opposed to working on the next real book, whatever that may be. And I don't know. And then there's fighting your own idiosyncrasies and demons about how you work and how you think, which I find I'm constantly at odds with myself of like, I always want to do too many things. Like I, and like how to cut back on those things because you can't do them all. How to choose which of those things is the thing to progress with. That it's, and are you doing that out of judging the actual quality? Is there some part of your personality that's ugly that's coming into play of like, for me, like the contrarian in me, like, oh, you like Drome? You're not getting that again. like you know, like oh, Drome 2 would be successful. Maybe, who knows? We don't know what if Drome will be successful, but like, like there's part of me, I know that's part of my personality, like of like,
Yeah.
oh, you want me to say this. I can tell that you are setting me up to say this, and I am not going to say that. Like whatever it is, like, you know, and I and that's not a great part of my personality. Like that's a prickly part of my personality. And how much of
Sure.
that is guiding my decision making on what I work on tomorrow morning. Uh, so I don't know. It's like when you feel your parents in you. Like
Yeah.
like my my dad, like I feel a response, a response to something come out of my mouth, and it's my dad. 100%. It's just this like immediate sort of like kids don't know what they're talking about sort of thing. Like, like, and I can feel my parents in me. And like, it can even be like in like a facial expression. Sometimes you're like, oh, that's my dad. That's my mom. Like, and
Yeah.
how much control do you have over that? Like, what are, I don't know. Yeah. It's all a mess. I'm really enjoying this therapy session. It's pretty
Yours
good.
is young. Mine is 17, and I got a text a little while ago that said, "I'm about to do something very you, Dad." And I was like, "No, no, whatever it is,
Oh
I don't care what
yeah.
it is. Don't. I am a very impulsive human being, and you're not. You can't be me. Don't do it."
Yeah.
So yes, that is very terrifying when they get old enough. When you see yourself in them,
Yeah.
because my son has always been very much like my wife. Although he's taller than her, he's the mini me. Um, so it's a very weird dynamic as he gets older to see the parts of myself that
Yeah.
I have struggled with and
Mhm.
know you can't protect them from it, and they've just got to kind of fuck it up and
Yeah. Yeah.
figure it out.
See what happens. Find their way. Um. Yeah. She's young. We'll
Yeah,
we'll, we'll
you,
see.
you got time.
I got time. I got time to become a better person. Uh, more of a
We
role
all do.
model. Um, no, we're at the point with her where it's like I think you have to start explaining what dad's job is, and that most people do not have this job. Like he's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna work, and she's like drawing with crayons. It's like, yeah. That for most people, dad's job is really weird and also kind of a spoiled brat job. Uh, that he sits in a room and draws all day. Um, most people go to work.
Well, despite working with and or being an artist for 3 decades now myself, when my son was like, "I don't wanna go in the artistic field at all, I wanna go into biomedical engineering," I was very secretly clapping,
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Yes, because you can't make any money as an artist."
There's well, I'd like to think there's a security in biomedical engineering and those jobs and art. I feel very lucky right now with art, but it's no guarantee and no promises. Um,
Right.
and yeah, and also sometimes I'll always just wonder like what percentage of people appreciate it. Like what is
Yeah.
is the actual interest in something. And comics especially brings that up where it's such a I think in other places, Japan and maybe even Europe too, it's a bigger media than it is here. But here I feel the people who read comics is pretty small. Um People are impressed if you tell them you do it. Um but I don't know. I feel like he could. 90% of the population maybe has never read a comic. I feel like younger generation is getting higher, probably just with the
Yeah.
rise of like the scholastic books and those sorts of. But I feel like my generation and older, like very possible 90%. And well, they're like 90% of the population not having seen a movie is crazy. Like everybody's seen a movie.
What's weird with modern comics, because you have these divergent streams that are dominating the direct market, because you have people who will buy them because they've always bought them, and then they will store them and they will slab them, which seems absolutely corrupt to me. You know, I don't need anything encased in carbonite. Like the whole thing is, I got into comics because my older cousin was like, "Hey, this is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Seems like you'd really dig this. Here you go." And it created a lifelong journey and love of the medium.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm not dissing people who buy 50. Well, maybe I am dissing people who buy 50 variants, but you know, because it's propping up the market in to my mind, a bad way. Because they're not really appreciating the art and the expression that has gone into this form.
Collecting, I think, is something different. Like, and I have it within me, and it's a fight. Like I will not buy a record player because I cannot start buying records because I know how I am. Because like, if I used to love the Clash, they're still great, but they're not like one of the bands I listen to all the time anymore.
Yeah,
but if I
feel
bought
that
a
way about the
record
Cult, so I get
player,
it.
I would definitely need to have the First Class album and London Calling. And at that point, it's like, well, how do you not give them enough rope? And then it's like, well, you should probably also have Sandinista and Combat Rock. And I know myself cut the crap as well, which is not even good. Like it's maybe has some good songs, but like, and I just know that I have that like completest thing, and it wouldn't be enough to have the White Album. It would like, I would have to like start filling that in, and then it would continue to like, you know, the Pixies, and then I'd be like, oh, you don't have a Silver Apples record, like you got to get like, you know, and like I just know how I am, and I also know that it's not about the music at that point. Like, you know, like owning Sandinista on vinyl wouldn't, for me, would never be about the music. It's about some weird other thing going on in my brain. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. It satisfies some happiness because I think I know how I am, and it's just like I can't do it. And so, like, you know, people who slab their comics, it's not about reading them. Yeah, that's fine. You know, and it's like, oh, you traded up and you went from a 7.5 to an 8.0. Like, okay, that's cool. You know, like that makes you happy. I I fiddle with pens. I will spend money on pens. I will spend money on these sorts of things. That is just not one of the things that I'll do. Um, so yeah, it's a but the collectors dominate, and then so there's that whole market. But then there's like, I feel like sometimes our it seems so disconnected. Like people, webtoons and online comics like that have huge followings. They don't seem to know anything about this direct market scene at all. The direct market scene doesn't seem to know anything about them. There's this huge YA market that doesn't seem to know anything about those other two. There's the manga market, which is dominant, which doesn't seem to know anything about this. So like it is just sort of like, they're kind of all, why are they so separate? Because I'm sure you can find people who will say, I read manga, I will not read it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure there's people who only read YA books, not just young. I think there are adults who only read sort of YA books. And then, you know, and why there isn't this overlap, I always find sort of weird. And it's also sort of weird to me that like Marvel and DC somehow missed out on manga. Like there must have been an opportunity for them to be a manga publisher in the United States to do what Viz does. And they were like, no, like those companies had to have come to them as like, who are the big publishers of comics in the United States? Marvel and DC, and Marvel and DC at some point must have been like, no, it doesn't work. Like, and then Viz just came out and like over time built it up, but now it's just a powerhouse where like, I would say if we're actually talking about the real big two, it's going to be Scholastic and Viz. I think in terms of book sales, dwarfing Marvel and DC.
Yeah. Their marketing stuff is really strange because I look at like Kodansha is my go-to example of this, where they're now a sponsor of Liverpool, which is the team I happen to follow in the Premier League. But every weekend on the Dashers, you get Kodansha ads.
Oh, really?
And you have to, it's like, why are Marvel and DC, at least for the movies, even not using that? Because those, all these threads connect, all these different streams. If you can figure out a way to hold them in your hand and then make a ball and tighten it together, that's money.
Yeah.
And that's presumably what corporate capitalism wants to do. So.
Yeah. It's a strange industry.
It is.
I'm not really sure how it works. I feel like I should be more informed about it, but it seems beyond me. So I just focus on just making comics.
Well, let's help you sell some Drome here.
Okay.
Right? So dear listener, buy Drome.
Yeah.
Right? It's right up there with Junie Ba's Boy Wonder and Jeff Lemire's Minor Arcana is my favorite book of 2025.
Okay.
I absolutely love it. I will continue to sing his praises for the bold and inventive storytelling. As you know, I really do believe this. It's just not me blowing smoke up your ass, but I think you're transitioning into one of the current masters of the modern 4-color realm. I know that's a bold statement, but and I do think this very much merits an award, and I tend to be right about my award projections. And if anybody doubts me, just look at Boom's Jellyfish, which nobody had heard of last year, and I talked to Boom about it. I sung the praises all year, and now it is up for an Eisner nom coming up next week.
Yeah, next week. It's Drome. It comes out August 19th from 23rd Street, which is First Second's more adult imprint that they're launching this year with Drome, a bunch of other books I should have researched. Paul Pope's THB is getting collected by them. If you've ever tried to buy back issues of THB, then you are fighting a collector's market. But that's coming out through them as well. So it's coming out August 19th. I'll be at shows this year too. I'll be at Small Press Expo in Bethesda. I'll be at New York Comic Con. I'll be in France in St. Malo at a comic book expo.
Nice.
And
very cool.
Yeah. I did Angoulême this year. It was a lot of fun. And I'll also be at MICE, the Massachusetts Independent Comic Expo in December.
Okay.
Up in Boston.
Nice. I haven't even heard of that one. So
it's small. I was actually like, it was sort of founded by a lot of the people. I lived in Boston for a long time. And it was founded by a lot of the people I was friends with. I was actually at like the first one, which was like a super indie basement show. And now it's grown pretty big. I think like Raina Telgemeier and Scott McCloud are guests this year, I think. I'm one of the guests as well this year.
Very cool.
So it's like a big-ish indie show. It's not as big as SPX or TCAF, but pretty good size.
Nice. Well, where can people find you online and try to keep up to date with all this stuff?
Probably Instagram is the most consistent. I'm at Jesse.Lonergan there. There's also my website, which connects to everything, which is just www.jesselonergan.com. Blue Sky is jesselonergan.blue. Theirs is too long. They got to make it simpler, but it's just Lonergan. right now. I think I'm maybe the most famous Jesse Lonergan. For a long time, I wasn't. There was an Australian rules football player who is be above me, but I think he's retired. So I think I'm moving up the ranks of Jesse Lonergans, and basically everything's through my name. I'm not the era of having a clever handle. I sort of missed out on, and just Jesse Lonergan everywhere.
Smart. Yeah, Blue Sky, you can anchor to your website. It is their
Okay.
version of verifying. I've done it.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I should
it's
do
pretty
that
easy.
as well.
Yeah, it shortens the
Sure.
the
Yeah,
length
because they
of
just go
it.
on so long.
Yep.
But yeah, but it's
Yep.
Jesse Lonergan.
Well, I'll put links in the show notes to make it easy for everybody to find that.
Great.
And I always wrap up my interviews with a shout out now. So it's 2025. Let's wrap things up on a positive note. It's new since you were last on, but it can be something that inspired you recently or someone doing something nice for you. And I'll give you a minute to think about it and go first. I got distracted the other night watching YouTube videos about drivers in the Andes. And I like to think of myself as this pretty steady off-road driver. We lived in Colorado and used to love getting on these sketchy mountain roads for fun on my days off when I was working in a theater. I've done the whole Black Bear Pass thing out of Telluride,
Okay.
which that's like 1,000-foot drop.
Yeah.
On one, it's one track. It's rough, but nothing will clinch the butthole faster than watching these bus drivers in Peru. And it was a reminder both of the good times I had in Colorado and that we should be grateful that our commutes don't involve hanging off the side of a cliff every day in a very suspect bus. So,
Okay.
what do you got?
I think in terms of like media, I found or Instagram found for me Avant-Garde dance troupe,
Okay.
who I think they were on American Idol. I think they're it's this group of, I'm pretty sure, Japanese people. They all dress exactly the same, wearing like these long dresses and white shirts, and they all have the same hair, just doing these like very synchronized dances. And I find it, I find just an enjoyment of watching like very synchronized dancing, and that's great.
Yeah.
I also just got back. I went to Cape May in New Jersey and was at the beach. And I was on like this there Monday through Thursday on this sort of empty beach, and just like, I don't know, just being on the beach and just relaxing, and no phone, no anything for as long stretches was sort of life affirming for me. And sort
That's
of
awesome.
like, I feel I get very stuck in sort of like these tight little loops of my routines, and getting a chance to break out of that. And also feeling how easy it is to break out of it. Like, it's not really that hard. That was pretty life affirming for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, everybody needs a good little short vacation every now and again.
Yeah. Especially comic book people.
Especially-
I think.
Yeah, I was just especially comics
too much
folks.
time alone in wings.
All right. Well, Jesse, thanks for coming back on and chatting with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, this is Byron O'Neill, and on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Yeti, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. This is Byron O'Neill, one of your hosts of the Cryptid Creator Corner, brought to you by Comic Book Yeti. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It lets us know how we're doing, and more importantly, how we can improve. Thanks for listening.